In December of 2022, while crossing the panhandle of Oklahoma on USE 412 with nothing but frozen wheat fields and a freight deadline pushing me east, I rolled into the lights of a lone Conoco near Waynoka just after 12:30 a.m., desperate for caffeine and enough diesel to outrun an approaching ice storm. The forecourt's 8 pumps were lit, but the store windows were dark except for a single bluish glow flickering behind the Lotto poster. So I pulled beside Pump 6, killed my rig and stepped out into wind cold enough to whistle through my teeth, only to notice the digital price screen already climbing as if someone inside had activated the nozzle remotely. Gallons ticking, dollars spinning, though I hadn't even swiped a card. I lifted the handle and found it warm like a hand had just released it. Fuel gushing, though the trigger was slack. Startled, I jammed it back into the cradle, watched the total stop at exactly 6.66 gallons, then roll back down to 0 by itself. Screen blinking served in blood-red characters no modern Conoco interface uses. With adrenaline prickling, I headed for the store entrance, automatic doors sliding open on approach, despite the place appearing closed, and found the interior dim except for an odds and ends aisle bathed in TV light. The smell inside was wrong. Ozone mixed with copper, like lightning had struck a scrapyard. At the counter stood a clerk whose face I saw only in silhouette, glow from the monitor painting the back of his shaved head, shoulders unnaturally squared. Before I spoke, he slid a paper cup forward, its cardboard printed not with a brand but my full name, and the words paid on Pump 6 typed below in courier font. I tried explaining the malfunction, but my voice came out muffled, swallowed by the humming coolers, though their fans were silent, and the clerk raised one hand, pointing past the beverage station to a narrow hallway marked Employees Only, that hadn't been there when I glanced through the glass from outside. My feet moved before sense caught up, coffee cup forgotten. At the hallway's end, a steel door waited half open, spilling green emergency light over the tile, and beyond it concrete steps spiraled downward, each tread stamped with a date counting backward from 2022 all the way to 1967. The year, I dimly recalled, that an EF5 tornado leveled the original station miles north. As I descended, my phone, no signal since Amarillo, vibrated with voicemail notifications, each from an unknown number, each exactly 30 seconds apart, playback whispering the same sentence in my own voice: "Don't let him top you off." The stairwell ended in a subterranean maintenance bay lined by mirrors where tool racks should have been. In each mirror I saw Pump 6 outside, snow starting to swirl in the floodlights, yet the reflections were delayed like CCTV lag. And standing beside the nozzle in those images was the clerk, head tilted toward the cab of my truck, his face a smear of static. I turned to flee, but the stairwell behind me had been replaced by a wall of corrugated steel, slick with condensation, and over the PA system upstairs, though muffled through concrete, came the ding of a full-serve pump and the creak of my rig's driver-side door opening. Panic surged as I hammered the steel, knuckles splitting until the metal flexed like wet cardboard and gave way into the main cooler aisle, fluorescent lights now strobing. Every glass door displayed not sodas but looping footage of highway dash cams showing my truck driving an empty road where mile markers counted down in reverse. The clerk waited at the register, arm extended, fingertips slowly drumming the counter. In front of him lay a receipt printer, stabbing out paper that unrolled down the aisle, each line reading Authorization Approved Volume 6.66, Total Souls with the currency column blank. I bolted outside, lungs burning with air that tasted of static, and saw snow swirling upward, not falling, disappearing into a black funnel above the canopy. Pump 6's hose hung from my open fuel tank, gushing a clear liquid that steamed on contact with the metal, but left no scent of diesel. I ripped it free, jumped into the cab, and the moment keys hit ignition, the clerk appeared in the passenger mirror, still inside the store, yet reflected inches behind my sleeper door, hand pressed to glass. I slammed into gear, tires throwing gravel, and shot down 412 until the station lights vanished, but every 5 miles the odometer froze, reset to 6.66, then resumed, trip meter refusing to hold any other number. At sunrise I reached Woodward, pulled into a crowded Love's, and opened the fuel cap, finding the tank bone dry despite a full gauge. An attendant helped inspect, discovering the nozzle opening welded shut with a layer of silver metal smooth as factory work, impossible overnight without tools. That afternoon, my bank app showed a pending charge from Conoco serve number 0006 for $0.00. Memo line reading, "Thanks for stopping by." 3 months later, I still receive a nightly voicemail at 12:30 a.m., my own voice drowning in pump static, asking if I need just 6 more gallons to make the distance I'll never quite finish. In April of 2024, while on a red-eye relocation drive from Boise to Denver after accepting a promotion I wasn't sure I wanted, I stopped just past 2:15 a.m. at a dusty Lover's off I-80 near Rawlins, Wyoming, planning only to stretch and grab caffeine before the mountain push. Yet those 20 minutes on the forecourt convinced me some graveyard shift stations stock more than chips and diesel. The place looked ordinary at first, yellow canopy, 3 semis idling, fluorescent buzz spilling from the store windows. But the moment I stepped from my hatchback, the air felt muffled, as if the entire parking lot wore noise-cancelling headphones, the truck engines visible but silent, plume of exhaust drifting without rumble. Motion sensors failed to trigger music from the pump speakers, and when I tapped the credit reader, the screen blinked unknown card, though the plastic had never failed before. Shrugging, I headed inside, doors hissing open on cue. The interior sang with the usual hum, coolers, microwaves, distant fryer, but only one other customer lingered. A lanky man in faded coveralls, methodically mopping the tile in tight concentric squares, head bowed. He wore a name patch that simply read, "Helper," stitched in uneven thread. The cashier, a middle-aged woman with perfect lipstick, greeted me by my first name before I offered payment, insisting the system already had me on file. I joked about doppelgangers. She didn't smile, only slid a styrofoam cup toward me, lid taped shut, label printed prepaid, and a timestamp 5 minutes in the future. The register rang the total as 000.00, receipt ejecting blank except for one line, shift balance equals. Uneasy, I drifted the aisles, noticing every snack bore no brand names, just generic labels reading chips, nuts or sweet drink, and expiration dates were stamped blank. The cooler doors reflected the store perfectly, yet not me. In their glass I could not find my shape, only the swirling mop patterns behind, circles tightening near my heels, though the janitor remained 30 feet away. My phone showed full bars but no carrier ID. The clock blinked 2:15 no matter how long I watched. Deciding to leave, I approached the doors, only to watch them slide open and reveal the same interior again, like a looped video. I stepped back in confusion. The help sign above the restrooms now read, "Helper shift active." The cashier turned her head mechanically 90 degrees and announced, "Inventory must match departure," gesture pointing to the coffee in my grip. At that instant, the janitor's mop clacked, handle splitting, wooden grain unraveling into long, pale tendrils that snaked across the floor, tracing the exact outline of my shoe prints in sour-smelling water. Each tendril hardened into glossy track marks, trapping my soles. Panic fired. I yanked free, shoes slipping from my feet, sprinted down an aisle lined suddenly with identical beige doors, each marked exit, every knob cold and slick. Behind me, the cooler's vacuum condenser kicked on, except the sound wasn't machinery, but dozens of whispered numbers being counted down, starting at 50, echoing through vent grills. I slammed through the nearest exit and found not parking lot, but a maintenance hallway lit by amber strobes. Along its length, pallet, jacks sat loaded with cardboard boxes labeled returns. Every box the size and shape of a coffin, sealed yet twitching faintly as though containing restless cargo. Each carried a clipboard listing UPC codes and a single handwritten word: nameless. As the countdown reached 30, the hallway lights dimmed and the twitching grew rhythmic, lids buckling outward with each flash. I stumbled toward daylight at the far end, but the floor became sticky with mop water that smelled of cold coffee and fresh asphalt. A shadow elongated ahead, tall, rubber boots, broken mop handle clutched like a spear, its head tilting in insect angles. I veered into a side door stamped receiving. Inside, under flickering fluorescence, stood a payphone atop a lone pallet. Receiver lifted itself, dangling, and the rattle of coins echoed though none fell. The phone rang, displayless, and without thinking I answered. My own tired voice spoke. Shift closed, inventory balanced, 1 item outstanding. Please return to shelf. The line clicked dead. The countdown hit 10. The payphone disgorged a cash register drawer that crashed at my feet, spilling blank receipts and a single name tag identical to the janitor's. Except the stitch now spelled my first name where helper had been, A red LED inside the drawer flashed low stock. Footsteps squelched outside, the janitor's boots slapping closer. With nowhere else to run, I shoved through an emergency push bar and burst directly onto the night forecourt. The semis still idling silently, yet now plated with frost, despite spring temperatures. The digital pump screens all displayed the same message. Customers in aisle. Fuel meters spun backward, gallons counting down from an unseen total. My hatchback's headlights were on. Engine running, though keys were in my pocket, wipers pacing across a perfectly dry windshield. On the passenger seat sat the styrofoam cup, tape broken, steam curling, and my reflection wavered in the side glass, features slightly blurred like an overcompressed photo. I floored the accelerator, tires squealing without sound, merging back onto I-80, where a gust finally shattered the strange silence, truck engines roaring to life behind. My phone sprang to normal service. The time jumped to 3:04 a.m. 49 minutes escaped the clock. A mile marker sign sliced through the beams, numbers smeared with fresh mop water. I drove straight to Laramie before pulling over. The name tag lay stuck to my sock, thread spelling my name with surgical precision. It reeked of floor cleaner. Days later, a charge appeared on my card. Love's Truck Stop number 000, amount $0 and 01 cent, memo line 1 item returned. I haven't entered a gas station after midnight since, because somewhere along that high plane a storefront recognizes me as the missing inventory it still wants back on the shelf. In August of 2021, I was hauling a U-Haul packed with my late uncle's tools from Beaumont to Tallahassee, racing a tropical storm that crawled up the Gulf like a slow grey monster. By 1:45 a.m., rain had turned US 90 through rural Louisiana into a glistening canal of reflected headlights. The dashboard thermometer read 93, even at that hour, humidity so thick the windshield fogged between passes of the wipers. Low fuel and a fuller bladder forced me to exit at a rickety sign that blinked gas ice bait, arrow pointing down an unlit service road that paralleled dark water for half a mile before a lone canopy materialized. Bayou Stop 17. 4 rust-pocked pumps, a squat cinder block store painted hospital green, and an ancient ice locker thrumming under a buzzing sodium lamp. No other vehicles. Rain slackened the moment I rolled beneath the awning, as if the storm paused to watch. I shut the engine, swiped my card. The pump refused every brand, then reset to ready without prompting, so I resigned to prepay inside. The glass door wheezed open on a blast of freezer air scented with crawfish boil and bleach. Fluorescence strobed overhead, giving the aisles a low frame rate jitter. Behind the counter, a bald attendant in a utility jumpsuit stared at a bank of dusty CRT monitors showing grainy live feeds from outside. His eyes tracked me without moving his head. I offered a polite howdy, held up $40. He tapped a fingernail on the counter twice, sharp, metallic, then pushed forward a tarnished brass key fob numbered 17 and said in a flat Cajun drawl that the pump takes cash only at night, but the machine outside's already pouring what you need. Confused, I glanced at the monitors. My U-Haul sat under pump 2, handle in the tank, gallons rolling, though I had left the latch engaged and the card reader unapproved. The attendant pressed the key into my hand, monotone, saying, "If you take ice, remember the door closes quick, eyes never blinking." I didn't want ice, but something about his insistence felt like a script he had to finish delivering, so I nodded, pocketed the key, and stepped back into swelter. Outside, sure enough, diesel flowed, though the nozzle was still holstered. The hose bled fuel straight through its cracked rubber onto the concrete, yet the digital readout counted upward in even dollars. No smell. No sheen on the ground, just the mechanical click of invisible liquid. My unease spiked when the readout froze at exactly $20.21 the current year, and the pump screen went blank, resetting to welcome. I yanked the nozzle, bone dry, no drips. A thunk made me spin. The ice locker door, large enough to walk into, now hung open, interior light flickering. Cold vapor curled out, carrying a sweet Freon tang. Remembering the attendant's key, I felt compelled, stupidly, to complete whatever bizarre transaction this place demanded, rationalizing that maybe the freezer held the cash slot. I approached. The floor of the locker was metal grating over darkness rather than bags of cubes, and a chain dangled inside with a paper tag labeled "Pull to Dispense." Against better judgment, I stepped in, feet numbing on frost-rimmed steel. The door slammed behind with hydraulic force. The light died, leaving only the blue glow of a tiny monitor mounted on the back wall. It flickered to life, showing split-screen CCTV angles. One feed displayed me inside the locker at that moment, another showed the attendant turning to face a customer who wasn't there, and a third displayed the U-Haul's cargo hold. The back doors were swinging open, though I had locked them, and something tall unfolded itself out of the darkness. Thin as fishing poles, joints bending wrong, silhouette glossy like wet vinyl. My breath steamed before my face, yet fogged the screen like condensation from within glass. I hammered the door, but the latch outside whirred, locking. The chain rattled overhead. A synthesized voice, my uncle's voice, sampled from old VHS tapes, spoke through a hidden speaker. Inventory check. Ice equals body equals weight. The floor grating rattled as though a conveyor below started up, and cold air drew downward, dragging fog with it. Beneath the grate, shapes moved. Bags of ice rearranging, or something beneath them, crawling closer to the gaps. I squeezed between monitor and wall, looking for any panel, when the brass key warmed in my pocket. I jammed it into a rusted slot under the screen. The CCTV view changed. Now the tall, slick silhouette stood at the store counter, handing the attendant a paper cup identical to the one from the previous story, nodding in slow jerks. On another feed, I watched myself dragging the chain, except Mirror Me was outside the locker, pulling the door shut on an empty interior. It locked, and Mirror Me walked toward the truck, climbed in, drove off. Panic clawed as reality buckled. The locker's light flicked back on, now red, illuminating rows of frozen figures sealed in plastic like meat. Each wearing the same clothes as me, but older, hair longer or shorter, faces caught mid-shock. Their eyes followed mine, although lids were ice shut. The floor lurched upward, grating, pressing against my boots, forcing me toward the ceiling. Without thinking, I yanked the chain. A klaxon blared, door hissed open, and I tumbled onto wet pavement, scraping palms. The forecourt was bright noon now, sun high, storm gone, traffic humming on 90 yards away. Bayou Stop 17 looked sun-rotted, windows boarded, pumps gone. My U-Haul idled on the shoulder, cargo doors flung wide, interior empty except for a single bag of ice melting over the floorboards, and a brass key fob stamped 18. Phone notifications flooded in, missed calls from the moving company demanding delivery. I had lost 12 hours. I drove non-stop to Baton Rouge, eyes never leaving the mirrors. A week later, an unmarked padded envelope arrived at my new apartment containing a Polaroid of me standing in the locker surrounded by those frozen doubles. Timestamp 1 month ahead. On the back, smeared in condensation rings, read, "Next shift starts when temperature drops. I keep my thermostat above 80 now because at 72 the HVAC vent whispers chains rattling and the ice maker dumps cubes even when the line is shut." Reminding me Bayou Stop 17 still tracks inventory, waiting for the day its freezer door closes quick enough to keep whichever version of me stays inside permanently. Gas stations feel safe because they're lit, busy, familiar, until the night shift rewrites the rules of service. If these encounters made you think twice before your next late-night fill-up, like share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because the brightest lights on the highway might be shining for someone else.